Charlie, a once lively golden retriever, was fading into darkness, both literally and figuratively. With his eyesight nearly gone and his spirit dimming, hope seemed out of reach. But just when he was about to give up, an unlikely hero stepped in, a mysterious gray cat with golden eyes. No one could have predicted what happened next, but their bond would defy all expectations and prove that love can truly light the way, even in the darkest moments. Old Charlie had been the Anderson family's golden retriever for 12 wonderful years. His once golden muzzle had turned silver with age, but his tail never stopped wagging. He had been a constant source of love and joy, not just for the Andersons but for the entire neighborhood. Charlie had always been known for his gentle nature, whether it was comforting a crying child, greeting the mailman with a friendly nuzzle, or lying patiently by Margaret Anderson's feet while she read by the fireplace. But lately, something had changed. Margaret first noticed it one evening when Charlie bumped into the coffee table, sending a magazine fluttering to the floor. At first, she dismissed it as clumsiness, but over the following days, she saw it happen again and again. Charlie would hesitate before stepping into the kitchen, misjudge distances, and occasionally whimper when he found himself confused by his surroundings. "Something's not right with Charlie," Margaret told her husband, Tom, one evening, concern deep in her voice. They both watched as their faithful companion cautiously navigated the living room, nose almost touching the floor, as if he was trying to sense where to step. The next morning, they took him to the veterinarian. The diagnosis was devastating. "Progressive cataracts in both eyes," Dr. Roberts explained gently. "Charlie's going completely blind." Margaret clutched Tom's hand as the vet continued. "It's not uncommon in older golden retrievers, but the progression is happening quite rapidly in his case. He may have only weeks before his vision is completely gone." Tears pricked Margaret's eyes as she looked at Charlie, who sat obediently beside her, blissfully unaware of the future that awaited him. Over the next few weeks, Charlie's world darkened. He grew hesitant to move around, afraid of bumping into things, and spent most of his time curled up in his bed by the fireplace. The dog who had once chased butterflies in the backyard now refused to step outside, his tail barely wagging anymore. The joy had faded from his once bright eyes, and it broke Margaret's heart. Desperate to help, she spent hours researching ways to assist blind dogs. She rearranged the furniture to create clearer paths, placed scent markers around the house, and even added textured mats near steps and doorways to help Charlie navigate. But despite their efforts, their once vibrant companion continued to withdraw. One chilly morning, Margaret stood by the back door, watching Charlie as he lay curled on his bed, his head resting on his paws. The sight of him so still, so unlike his usual self, brought an ache to her chest. "He needs something more than we can give him," she whispered to Tom, who stood beside her, sipping his coffee. "He needs a friend, someone who understands his world in a way we can't." Tom frowned. "A friend? You mean another dog?" Before Margaret could answer, their granddaughter, Sophie, who had been visiting for the weekend, piped up from the couch. "What about a cat?" Margaret turned, puzzled. "A cat?" Sophie held up her phone, showing them a video of a cat guiding a blind dog at a shelter in another state. The feline would walk ahead of the dog, pausing at obstacles and gently nudging him in the right direction. The sight of it was incredible. Margaret's heart swelled with hope. It seemed far-fetched, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this might be exactly what Charlie needed. "We're going to the shelter," she announced, setting down her teacup with renewed determination. Little did they know, this decision would not only change Charlie's life but lead to one of the most remarkable animal friendships their small town had ever seen. The local animal shelter was bustling with activity when Margaret and Tom arrived. The air was filled with a cacophony of barking dogs and meowing cats, but Margaret had only one mission in mind. Sarah, the shelter manager, greeted them warmly. "What brings you folks in today?" Margaret hesitated for a moment, then said, "We're looking for a cat, for our blind dog." Sarah raised an eyebrow but smiled. "That's a first." She led them toward the cat area, where rows of enclosures housed felines of all sizes and colors. Some were curled up asleep, others meowed for attention, reaching tiny paws through the bars. "I think I have just the right candidate for you," Sarah said, gesturing for them to follow her to a quieter section of the shelter. Perched on a high shelf, watching everything with calm, golden eyes, sat a striking gray cat. Unlike the others, who either slept or clamored for attention, this one was observing. "This is Luna," Sarah introduced. "She's about 3 years old. And here's what makes her special. She's been helping our elderly cats find their food bowls and guiding them to the litter boxes. We've never seen anything quite like it." Margaret's breath caught in her throat as she studied the cat. There was something almost knowing in Luna's gaze, something intelligent and deeply intuitive. "She was found in a nursing home parking lot," Sarah continued. "We think she might have been a therapy cat before she ended up here. She's incredibly patient and seems to instinctively understand when others need help." Margaret and Tom watched as Sarah carefully lifted Luna down and placed her near an elderly, blind cat in the shelter. To their amazement, Luna immediately pressed against the older feline's side and gently guided it toward the water bowl. "That's remarkable," Margaret whispered, eyes welling with tears. "But how would she react to a dog?" Tom asked cautiously. Sarah smiled. "Let's find out." The shelter staff arranged for a careful introduction in a quiet room. Charlie was led in slowly, his movements hesitant and uncertain in the unfamiliar space. His nose twitched as he tried to make sense of his surroundings. Luna, already sitting in the room, observed him closely. For a moment, the room was silent. Then, something incredible happened. Luna approached Charlie slowly, making a soft, trilling sound. Charlie's ears perked up at the unusual noise, his head turning slightly toward it. Instead of reacting with fear or aggression, Luna walked in a figure-8 pattern around his legs, letting her body gently brush against him. Charlie, who had been standing stiffly, relaxed. His tail gave a small wag, the first genuine sign of happiness Margaret had seen in weeks. Then, Luna did something extraordinary. She walked a few steps away from Charlie and made another trilling sound. Charlie turned his head toward the sound, intrigued. Luna repeated it, as if calling him. Tentatively, Charlie took a step toward her voice. "She's showing him the way," Tom said in amazement. Margaret wiped a tear from her cheek. "We're taking her home." What they didn't know was that this was just the beginning of something far greater than they could have ever imagined, a bond that would prove love knows no boundaries, not between species, and certainly not between hearts that recognize in each other exactly what they need. The first few days of Luna's arrival at the Anderson home were filled with cautious adjustments. Margaret and Tom had prepared everything, a special cat bed, a litter box, climbing posts, but Luna seemed more interested in Charlie than any of the new amenities. From the very first night, she established her own routine. Instead of curling up in the plush new bed Margaret had picked out for her, Luna chose to sleep at the edge of Charlie's large cushion near the fireplace. It was as if she understood that her place was by his side. Charlie, initially hesitant about his new companion, quickly learned to appreciate Luna's presence. He could sense her movements, feel her gentle nudges, and hear her distinctive trilling sounds. Whenever Charlie stirred in the night, disoriented or uncomfortable, Luna would make that soft, unique sound, a reminder that he was not alone. Margaret and Tom often found themselves watching in quiet amazement as Luna subtly guided Charlie through the house. The real breakthrough came during breakfast time on the third day. Charlie had been reluctant to walk to his food bowl since losing his sight, often waiting until someone guided him. But that morning, Margaret and Tom sat in awe as Luna orchestrated a remarkable scene. Luna walked to Charlie's bowl and tapped it twice with her paw, producing a distinct sound against the ceramic dish. Then she returned to Charlie, brushed against his side, and walked a few steps forward before stopping. When Charlie hesitated, she repeated the sequence: tap, return, nudge, and walk forward. Step by step, Charlie followed. When he finally reached his bowl, Luna sat beside him, watching as he ate. Margaret clutched Tom's hand. "It's like they're dancing," she whispered, not wanting to disturb the moment. Soon, Luna had developed a full system of signals. A soft meow meant, "Step up," for the porch stairs. A gentle pat with her paw against his leg meant, "Careful, obstacle ahead." Her trilling sound always meant, "Follow me, it's safe." With Luna by his side, Charlie's confidence began to return. He ventured into the backyard again, something he had refused to do since his blindness set in. Luna walked slightly ahead, stopping at any changes in the ground and guiding him past obstacles. Margaret and Tom watched in amazement as their dog, who had once seemed lost in darkness, was now moving with a renewed sense of trust. Neighbors who had seen Charlie's struggle were stunned by the transformation. One afternoon, Mrs. Jenkins from next door knocked on the Andersons' door, tears in her eyes. "I just watched the most beautiful thing," she told Margaret. Charlie was lying in the sun, having a restless dream, whimpering, his paws twitching. And Luna, she went right over and pressed against his side until he calmed down. Then she started grooming his face, like a mother comforting her pup. Margaret swallowed past the lump in her throat. Every day, Luna proved that her presence in Charlie's life was no accident, it was a gift. As the weeks passed, the Andersons marveled at the depth of their pet's bond. Charlie had gone from hesitant and withdrawn to trusting and engaged. He moved more freely, his tail wagging with more frequency. Luna was always there, his steadfast shadow. But with the changing seasons came new challenges. As autumn turned to winter, Charlie faced a fresh obstacle, the first snowfall of the year. One cold morning, Charlie stood at the back door, his nose twitching at the unfamiliar scent of freshly fallen snow. He hesitated, uncertain of the changing textures beneath his paws. It was the first time in months that he seemed truly afraid to step outside. Luna, however, had a plan. She ventured out first, her delicate paws leaving tiny imprints in the soft snow. Then she returned to Charlie, shaking the snow from her fur near his nose so he could smell it. Slowly, methodically, she began creating a path, walking back and forth to pack down the snow, forming a narrow corridor. "Tom, come look at this," Margaret called from the kitchen window. They watched as Luna returned to Charlie, tapping his paw gently with hers before walking forward. Hesitant at first, Charlie lifted one paw and stepped into the trail Luna had created. Step by step, he followed her lead. "She's making him a safe path," Tom marveled. "That cat is smarter than most people I know." Margaret couldn't help but laugh, but deep down, she knew there was something extraordinary happening. Luna wasn't just helping Charlie, she was problem-solving for him. She was adapting to his needs in ways that even they couldn't anticipate. Winter brought other challenges as well. The shorter days meant Charlie had to go outside in the dark more often, and the cold made his old joints stiff. But Luna adapted with every new challenge. She learned to push small rugs into place with her nose, creating textured pathways through the house so Charlie could find his way more easily. When his arthritis made it hard for him to get up in the mornings, Luna would knead his legs with her paws, massaging the stiff muscles until he was ready to move. The Andersons weren't the only ones who noticed. Dr. Roberts, their veterinarian, had been so impressed with their partnership that she began documenting their story. "This is more than just a friendship," she told Margaret one day during Charlie's checkup. "Luna isn't just guiding him, she's actively problem-solving to improve his quality of life. It's extraordinary." Word of their unusual companionship spread through the small town. People stopped by just to watch Luna guide Charlie through his daily routine. She became known as the Seeing Eye Cat, and their story even made it into the local newspaper. But the most magical moment came during the holiday season. The Andersons had worried about putting up their Christmas tree, fearing it would confuse Charlie's mental map of the house. But Luna had it all figured out. She spent an entire afternoon walking Charlie around the tree, making sure he understood the new layout. That evening, as the family admired the twinkling lights, Charlie lay beneath the tree with Luna curled up beside him. The cat had positioned them perfectly so that the colorful glow cast a warm light over both of them. Margaret wiped away a tear. "They look like a living Christmas card." Tom nodded. "More than that. They're proof that love finds a way." As winter stretched on, Charlie and Luna's bond only deepened. The Andersons had once feared that Charlie's blindness would steal his joy. Instead, they had witnessed something truly remarkable, a friendship that had defied all odds and given Charlie a new lease on life. And as they watched Luna gently lead Charlie to his favorite spot by the fireplace, Margaret realized something profound. When they had gone to the shelter that day, they had believed they were finding a guide for Charlie. But Luna had shown them something even greater. She had proven that love doesn't just help us see, it transforms us in ways we never expected. And for Charlie, who had once been lost in darkness, Luna had become the light. As winter melted into spring, Charlie and Luna's remarkable partnership continued to inspire everyone who witnessed it. The once hesitant golden retriever now walked with more confidence, always guided by his feline friend. The Andersons had long since stopped worrying about Charlie's ability to navigate his world, because Luna had made sure he could. But as time went on, Charlie's age began to catch up with him. At nearly 14 years old, his once strong legs grew weaker, and he tired more easily. Margaret and Tom noticed that he took longer to get up in the mornings, and sometimes he struggled even with Luna's guidance. The signs were undeniable. Charlie was slowing down. Yet, Luna never wavered in her devotion. If anything, she became even more attentive. She spent more time curled against Charlie's body, warming his aching joints. She would groom his face gently in the mornings, as if encouraging him to wake up and greet the day. One particularly memorable morning, the Andersons witnessed something extraordinary. Charlie seemed to be having difficulty rising from his bed. He let out a soft whimper, his body reluctant to move. Luna, sensing his struggle, immediately sprang into action. She ran to Margaret and meowed insistently, leading her toward the shelf where Charlie's arthritis medication was kept. Margaret's eyes widened in astonishment as she realized what Luna was doing. She had learned to recognize when Charlie needed extra help. "She's not just his eyes anymore," Tom observed softly. "She's his voice, too." Word of Charlie and Luna's story had spread far beyond their small town. The local veterinary college had taken a keen interest in their unique relationship and sent researchers to document their interactions. What they discovered was nothing short of groundbreaking. Luna had developed an extensive vocabulary of signals to communicate with Charlie. She used specific sounds and touches to guide him in different situations. If he hesitated while walking, she would brush against his left or right side, indicating which way was safe. If he seemed confused about his surroundings, she would use her tail to gently tap his legs. Veterinary behaviorists were astounded by what they dubbed innovative interspecies communication. They began studying Luna's behaviors, hoping to understand more about how animals could naturally step into caregiving roles. But for the Andersons, it wasn't about scientific breakthroughs. It was about the love and trust that had formed between their two remarkable pets. As the weather warmed, the Andersons took Charlie and Luna outside more often. Luna had developed a new way of helping Charlie enjoy the outdoors without fear. She would bring him small treasures, a fallen leaf, a feather, even a flower petal, and place them in front of him. Charlie, with his keen sense of smell, would investigate these gifts, his tail wagging softly each time. It was as if she wanted him to experience the world through scent and touch, making up for the vision he had lost. One day, as Margaret watched Luna lead Charlie around the yard, she overheard a conversation between two neighbors standing by the fence. "You know," one said, "I used to think cats and dogs could never really be friends. And I certainly never thought a cat could be so purposeful in helping a dog." The other nodded thoughtfully. "Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many assumptions we make about who can help whom, or who can be friends with whom." Margaret smiled to herself. Charlie and Luna had done more than change each other's lives. They had changed the way people thought about friendship, compassion, and adaptation. As the summer months arrived, Charlie's energy began to wane. He still followed Luna's lead, still responded to her signals, but his steps were slower, and his naps grew longer. The Andersons knew that time was catching up with him. One golden afternoon, Margaret sat outside, watching as Luna carefully guided Charlie toward the shade of the old oak tree. Once they reached it, Luna nestled against his side, pressing close. Charlie let out a contented sigh and rested his head beside her. Margaret felt tears prick her eyes. She knew what was coming. She also knew that Luna did, too. Charlie peacefully passed away one early winter morning, with Luna faithfully curled beside him. He had lived 2 remarkable years with his feline guide, far exceeding the veterinarian's expectations for his quality of life after going blind. Luna had given him not just guidance, but a reason to embrace each new day. In the days that followed, Luna's grief was palpable. She would sit by Charlie's empty bed, occasionally making her special trilling sound, the one that had always been just for him. Margaret and Tom worried for her, uncertain of how she would adjust to life without her companion. But just as she had taught Charlie to adapt, Luna too found her way forward. Margaret noticed that Luna had started spending more time by the window, watching the neighborhood. One day, she began meowing urgently at the glass, refusing to stop until Margaret looked outside. There, struggling up the sidewalk, was Mr. Peterson from 3 houses down. He had recently returned from the hospital after a stroke and was using his walker for the first time. Without hesitation, Margaret invited him in for tea. As soon as he sat down, Luna immediately approached him, rubbing against his legs with the same gentle patience she had once shown Charlie. By the end of the visit, Mr. Peterson was smiling, his first real smile since his stroke. That became a new routine. Luna seemed to have found a new purpose, helping people in the neighborhood who were struggling with mobility issues or loneliness. The local physical therapy center even invited her to become a therapy cat, where she showed an uncanny ability to know which patients needed encouragement the most. The shelter that had once housed Luna also took inspiration from her story. The Charlie and Luna program was born, a special initiative pairing senior and disabled animals together, giving them companionship and support. A special wing of the shelter was dedicated to the project, with a large photo of Charlie and Luna hanging above its entrance. Below their image, the words, "Love lights the way," were inscribed. On the one-year anniversary of Charlie's passing, the Andersons received an unexpected package in the mail. It was from a family in another state who had adopted a blind puppy through the Charlie and Luna program. Inside was a letter and a photo of their blind pup being guided by a gray cat, remarkably similar to Luna. "Your story gave us the courage to believe in possibilities," the letter read. "Charlie and Luna showed us that sometimes the greatest acts of love come from the most unexpected friendships." Margaret wiped away a tear as she held the photo. She looked over at Luna, who sat perched by the window, watching the world with her ever-knowing golden eyes. Charlie had been her first student. But now, Luna's lessons of love and guidance were rippling outward, touching lives in ways no one had ever imagined. And as the afternoon sun bathed the room in warm light, Margaret realized something. Luna had never stopped being a guide. She had simply found new ways to light the path for others. And in doing so, she ensured that Charlie's legacy would live on forever. Luna's story did not end with Charlie's passing. If anything, it was just the beginning of a new chapter, one that would continue to touch lives in ways no one had imagined. In the weeks that followed, Luna remained a quiet presence in the Anderson home. She still slept in her usual spot near the fireplace, still followed her routine of watching the world through the window, and still carried herself with the same quiet intelligence that had once guided Charlie. But there was something else, an undeniable sense that she was searching for a new purpose. Margaret and Tom worried for her. Charlie had been her entire world, and they feared she would withdraw into loneliness. But Luna had always been more than just a guide. She was a problem solver, a caregiver, a beacon of love for those who needed it most. And soon, it became clear that her work was far from over. One morning, as Margaret sipped her tea in the kitchen, she heard Luna meowing insistently at the front door. It was a sound Margaret hadn't heard in a long time, not since Luna had first led Charlie into the backyard, guiding him step by step. Curious, she opened the door and saw a familiar face. Mr. Peterson, their elderly neighbor, stood on the porch, gripping his walker with uncertainty. His movements were slow, hesitant. Margaret remembered that he had recently suffered a stroke and was still regaining his strength. Without hesitation, Luna stepped outside and rubbed against his legs. Mr. Peterson chuckled softly, a sound that seemed almost foreign after months of struggle. "Would you like to come in for some tea?" Margaret asked, stepping aside. Mr. Peterson nodded, his grip on the walker tightening. But just as he seemed about to move, Luna took a few steps forward, then stopped, looking back at him expectantly. Margaret watched, mesmerized. She was guiding him. Slowly, step by step, Mr. Peterson followed. And with every movement, Luna stayed close, never rushing him, never leaving his side. By the time they reached the kitchen table, Margaret felt tears pricking her eyes. "She's helping me find my way," Mr. Peterson murmured, settling into a chair. Margaret smiled. "She has a way of doing that." Luna's new purpose became clear in the weeks that followed. She began visiting Mr. Peterson regularly, accompanying him on his short walks down the street, always moving at his pace, always guiding him with the same patience she had once shown Charlie. Soon, other neighbors began to take notice. Mrs. Franklin, a widow who had been struggling with loneliness, found Luna curled up beside her on her porch swing one evening, purring contentedly as she rocked back and forth. A young boy named Evan, who had difficulty speaking due to a speech delay, found comfort in talking to Luna, who always listened without judgment. The local physical therapy center heard about Luna's remarkable ability and invited her to visit their patients. To everyone's astonishment, she seemed to know exactly who needed her the most. She would sit beside a woman learning to walk again after surgery, gently nudging her hand as if encouraging her forward. She would rest against an anxious child, her soft purr a soothing balm to their nerves. It was clear, Luna had become more than just Charlie's guide. She had become a healer in her own right. Meanwhile, the Charlie and Luna program at the shelter had expanded. Inspired by their story, the staff had begun pairing senior animals with younger companions who could help them navigate their world. The initiative had been so successful that other shelters across the state started adopting similar programs. A special wing of the shelter had been dedicated to their legacy. A mural was painted on the wall, depicting Charlie and Luna side by side, walking together as they had in life. Below them, the words, "Love lights the way," were inscribed. One day, Margaret and Tom received a letter from a family who had adopted a blind puppy through the program. Enclosed was a photo of the puppy being guided by a sleek gray cat with golden eyes. The resemblance to Luna was uncanny. "Your story gave us the courage to believe in possibilities," the letter read. "Charlie and Luna showed us that sometimes the greatest acts of love come from the most unexpected friendships." Margaret clutched the letter to her chest, tears welling in her eyes. "Their story isn't over," she whispered. Tom nodded. "No, it never will be." Years passed, but Luna's impact only grew. The local veterinary college established the Charlie and Luna Scholarship, awarded to students researching animal-assisted therapy and interspecies communication. Studies were conducted on Luna's unique ability to intuitively assist those in need, leading to groundbreaking discoveries in animal behavior. Jenny Martinez, a young girl who had once met Luna during a school visit, grew up to become a veterinary technician specializing in rehabilitative care for disabled pets. "Luna and Charlie changed my life," she would often say. "They taught me that disabilities don't define you, love does." Even after Luna passed peacefully in her sleep many years later, her legacy endured. The Andersons established a fund in her honor, ensuring that senior and disabled animals would always have the care and companionship they needed. In the town's Central Park, a small bronze statue was erected, a golden retriever and a cat walking side by side, forever captured in their eternal bond. Children would stop to touch the smooth metal, their parents telling them the story of Charlie and Luna. A plaque beneath the statue bore the words, "For Charlie and Luna, who taught us that love lights the way." And on quiet mornings, as the sun rose over the park, casting a golden glow upon the statue, some swore they could still feel their presence, the gentle trilling of a cat, the soft wag of a tail. Because some bonds, some love stories, never truly end. They simply light the way for others to follow.